What's up, everybody? Welcome into Shout at Buffalo Bills Football Podcast post-game edition for the first time this season, Ryan, in 2024. We're inside Highmark Stadium where the Bills dropped the preseason opener 33-6 to the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams comes out, puts together a couple of highlight real plays that, of course, went a little bit viral on social media. Everybody's been waiting for the number one overall pick to make his debut. I thought on both sides of the ball, we're going to get into it, just not enough efficiency, not enough execution. This was about as blah a start to a Bills season as I can remember.
Yeah, you said drop the game. They're dropping passes, dropping punts, dropping everything in this matchup, Matt. Like you said, a very uninspired effort. And, it's the preseason. You don't game plan, but the Bills just did not meet their standard, as Sean McDermott said today in his post-game presser. They did not look like a team that was very motivated to play out there on the field today.
We have to talk about all the things that didn't go right, but I do want to start by saying, let's use a little bit of proper perspective here. What happens is we spend the 2 weeks of training camp. Everybody gets juiced up. Everybody gets dialed up, excited about a lot of the different storylines that are kind of playing out. And then we get into the game, and if it doesn't go the way that you expect, it's immediately panic button time. And I don't think we're necessarily there. I posed that question in the headline a lot because I don't think it's time to push the panic button. I think, Josh Allen, Connor McGovern, I spoke to him after the game as well. They did a great job of illustrating what was at play here today. The Bills had 4 running plays that they had that they were executing in this game. They did not game plan for the Bears. And what Connor McGovern told me was a lot of times that the Bears were running some stunts. They were running some pressures at the Bills. They didn't have that really dialed up, game planned up to in a game scenario where they would have been able to handle that a little bit better. Not to make an excuse, of course, because you're still out there at times not executing. The Bills in all 4 of their Super Bowl seasons, Ryan, in the 90s, went 0 for 4 in the preseason. And I think sometimes we take too much away from the preseason. You're looking for individual performances, but I think it's important not to overreact, jump the gun. I think if it's this bad next week, it'll be a little bit of a different conversation. But it's just a disappointing start for Bills fans who are super excited to see what this new look offense and in a lot of ways defense was going to look.
Yeah, no one should be hitting the panic button at all during the preseason, all 3 games. Even if the Bills come out and look bad in the next 2, you don't hit the panic button until the regular season comes, Matt. That's when it really matters. And one other point, too. Remember, the Bears were in the Hall of Fame game. This is their second preseason game.
Huge point.
They've prepped differently. They've had some more time. They've had some more live game action against other teams. Whereas the Bills came into this was their first matchup of the preseason. Obviously, they do have a joint practice next week before their preseason game number 2 against the Steelers. So we'll see if that helps them out a little bit, but no reason to hit the panic button yet. There's a lot that they can learn from when they go back and watch the film. A lot of players that, hurt their stock today a little bit. Those people on the bubble that maybe would like a few plays back, but overall, no reason to panic just yet.
Let's take a kind of a snapshot of the starting offense and what it looked like when Josh Allen was on the play for 8 snaps in the first quarter. Of course, petition to stay in the game. Sean McDermott was not listening to that petition and decided to just put him on the bench, which is I think the right call. You don't want to take a chance. He got out and ran on one play and slid. I think that was his last play where he went back. They had a run play after that. You had Keon Coleman getting a ton of snaps. I think that's a good place to start. He gets 3 targets. One of them was a nice reception on a short route. It looked like a zone coverage, and he was kind of just fitting into the zone there. Gave the quarterback an area to make a throw. Then it was 2 plays where they were incomplete. One was in the end zone where it went up over his head. It looked like he tripped as he tried to kind of make his cut on the route. And those are the kind of little things, the details that I think a rookie's going to have to clean up. You're going to have those moments.
Yeah, and you said it. He slipped on that play. Had he stayed on his feet, he has the jump ball ability to go up and catch that ball. Wasn't the greatest ball, but it would have been a spot where he could have grabbed it. So I think that's something you can take away from this. The catch against the zone defense, move the chains with Josh Allen at quarterback. that's what you want. This wasn't like he was going up against man defense, but in a third down situation, he knew where he had to be. He got open. He caught the ball. So very promising in that aspect for Keon Coleman after the game. Both Josh Allen and Sean McDermott said the moment didn't seem too big for him. He seemed like he was very comfortable in this first preseason game. And we saw some positives out of the other two of the big three at the wide receiver position as well, Matt, from Khalil Shakir and obviously as well from Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, and I think Curtis Samuel, it's funny because Josh Allen made sure to mention that this is a very vanilla offering. They're not trying to show too much. They don't want teams to be able to game plan that for them starting in week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. But I do think we saw a little bit of a snippet into this offense and what they want to be. Curtis Samuel on a quick hitter screen pass, which they did a bunch of times last season when Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator. And I can't remember a single one being as effective as that one was in this game. And of course, preseason, but this is against the Bears starters where they shut things down for most of the game. And I thought Curtis Samuel made a great play there, gave you about 14 yards after the catch, which is like, that's going to be his calling card this season. A huge play for him. He didn't come out early. It looked like they were going with a little bit of a different look. I think they might have been going heavy 12, which meant I think Shakir was out there. I'd have to go back and watch the all 22. But either way you want to kind of talk about this, that's a huge first impression for Samuel. And then, of course, Shakir, Mr. Reliable on third down. Again, another guy that gives you yards after the catch.
Yeah, Curtis Samuel is going to be the Swiss Army knife for this offense, Matt. And the ways that they can utilize him, it can be gadget plays. You can put him in the backfield. You can put him on the outside at wide receiver, inside at wide receiver. He can do a little bit of everything. But the quick screen, we saw that thrown to Stefon Diggs so many times last year where it just didn't work. We saw other options as well. The Bills could never kind of get out of their own way. What you saw today from Curtis Samuel was he caught the ball and then he quickly knew he was going to cut inside and then get down the field. He had a plan in place because this is his bread and butter. It's something he's done throughout his career. He's good with the ball in his hands. So very promising in that aspect of it. Khalil Shakir caught everything that came his way, led the team with 3 receptions for 28 yards. He's what we've seen throughout training camp. He's going to be a big part of this offense. So a good day, I would say, for the 3 receivers in terms of maybe a few bright spots for this team.
Yeah, we'll talk about a receiver that maybe disappointed and stock took a little bit of a hit in a little while. But I want to say thank you so much for joining us on this post-game edition of Shout. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. If you're listening to the audio version after the fact, hit that 5-star review, subscribe to the show. If you found us, maybe a friend suggested it, we really appreciate all the support this time of year and beyond. Where do you want to go next?
I was actually going to see about going back to that wide receiver you just mentioned. Let's go there.
All right, so Marquez Valdes-Scantling, his first impression, and he leaves kind of a poor taste in your mouth because this is a guy that over the course of his career, the storyline in Green Bay and Kansas City has been the drops, and we've talked about it in camp the last 3 or 4 days about, he has these highs and lows, and today he had 1 target, 1 incomplete pass, 1 drop on the score sheet, and it's like, I don't know how to frame this conversation because I do feel like Bills fans, there's a healthy amount of Bills fans that are frustrated with MVS, right, that are probably at a place where they're willing to talk about what is another option. Maybe a Tyrell Shavers, maybe it's a KJ Hamler if he wins the return job. We'll get to that later. But MVS today not doing a whole lot to make you feel positive about his potential to not only surpass those other 3 guys in terms of finding a way onto the field, but when he is on the field, can you trust him?
Yeah, I would say the answer to that is no right now until he builds up that, goodwill, I guess, with the fan base. And the 2 things he has working with him is he and Josh Allen seem pretty close. He has some guaranteed money on his contract. Those 2 things might factor into him making this roster. But right now, I have trouble making a case for him to be on this roster. We already know about the big 3. Mac Hollins, I have at number 4. At number 5, MVS has not done anything to establish himself as that next guy up. Mm-hmm. He's had a very uneven training camp. He had some drops against Air, some drops in 7-on-7, 11-on-11, and now you get to the first preseason game, and he gets open, the ball just bounces right off of his hands and to the turf. It's what we've seen from him over and over again. At the end of the day, if the Bills want to carry 5 receivers, I don't know how you go with MVS over a Tyrell Shavers, for instance, or if KJ Hamler turns it around as a return man these next 2 weeks, how you could even go with him over Hamler. I get in this league, money matters. Production in past spots matter, but he has not done anything during his time with Buffalo to show that he's worth playing or putting on this 53-man roster.
The thing though that's tough is projecting preseason and training camp production into the season. Yeah. So like for me, Shavers is this guy that it's this great unknown about what he can be. And he had, his own snafu in this game. I thought that there was a ball put behind him, and we can talk about that. Could be a transition point because we got to talk about these backup quarterbacks.
Right.
But Shavers had a play that he could have made on the ball. It was behind him considerably. It was not a good throw by any stretch of the imagination, but you're fighting tooth and nail for a roster spot. You find any way to get your hands on that ball as a receiver and bring it down. He had to reach back. It was a really tough play. I'm not trying to put too much of a spotlight on that singular play, but like there isn't any type of resume that you're really leaning on in the Shavers projection, as opposed to MVS, who, for all of his faults, has had some big moments in the playoffs.
Yeah, he had some big moments last year in the playoffs, and he's performed in that area. And that Shavers play was tough because he created separation. He was open. It was just a terrible pass well behind him. Could he have made the play? Yes. The Bills, though, need to sit down and say, look at the age of these two players, look at how they figure they would contribute in this room. I mean, even if whoever they're going to go with, it's the 5th receiver. They're probably not going to see a lot of snaps. So can you justify Shavers over MVS because of special teams play? Can you justify MVS in case of an injury? Those are all the decisions that this front office, coaching staff, they have to make at the end of the day here in a few weeks.
So we have Mitchell Trubisky, who I've been accused of being, having a little bit of a, I don't know what I would call it, but some fans think that I'm super pro Mitch Trubisky. Right. And I don't know really where that comes from. Maybe it's just an underlying thing. I thought he was an upgrade over Kyle Allen, but I got to tell you, there wasn't a lot to like about his performance today. And I think if you look back at it, maybe the stats weren't as bad as the performance felt. He ended up going 10 of 18, 82 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He was sacked twice. It wasn't a good day for the offensive line. I think we have to have a Spencer Brown mini conversation here in a minute. Yeah. But Mitchell Trubisky, if the Bills are in a spot where Josh Allen is going to miss any amount of time, they are not in good hands with Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, this guy was like, listen, he could check it down. He can work his way down the field. He's done that in Pittsburgh. He did that in Chicago. He did it when he was with the Bills in the preseason for the last stint. But when he gets down in the red zone, all bets are off. It's like when the area closes down in terms of options, he gets just into the panic mode. And some of the throws down there, they were really dangerous. And I think it's a concern what you have at backup quarterback right now. And that's even before we talk about Shane Buechele.
Yeah. Mitch Trubisky has the big arm, Matt, but he can't fit the passes into the windows that Josh Allen can. Very few quarterbacks can. So when you see him try to rifle them into the end zone, you kind of hold your breath if you're a Bills fan, because he's putting it up there for anyone to kind of go and get it. And there were a few near interceptions in this game. The book on Mitch Trubisky remains the same. He holds on to the ball too long. He dinks and dunks over than trying to stretch the field between the 20s. Those are two of his biggest flaws, and we saw that again today. Taking the checkdown's not always a bad thing, and he moved the chains a few times, but there were times where holding the ball, then drops it off. In live game action, you can't hold the ball that long. You're going to get sacked a lot. You're going to make some bad plays. You're going to put the ball in areas where it's at risk, much like he did today. So, the overall stat line may not have looked awful, but there wasn't much to be encouraged about either.
If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. We really appreciate that. Shane Buechele, Ryan, today. Wow. I don't know if Shane Buechele is an NFL quarterback. I get the complicated nature. And listen, I thought the Bears front, first team, second team, and third team, really had a dominant day. Like they were constantly in the backfield. I think he was a little bit spooked at the time when, he started kind of panicking and trying to use his athleticism. But, when you're trying to run away from some of these edge rushers and interior linemen that are running at such a fast pace, like you're putting yourself in such a bad spot. And there were some bad throws. It was obviously the interception. I thought that he just looked uncomfortable. He looked out of place. There was a few times he came out the field. It looked like Josh Allen was trying to be the good teammate and pat him on the back. But frustrating day for Shane Buechele. And you have to wonder if the Bills have to think about maybe upgrading that third quarterback spot as they move forward. And I don't think you're going to add anybody that's going to compete with Mitch Trubisky. But I don't know if you might have just seen enough today from Shane Buechele to not have him be part of this thing moving forward.
Right. And, the Bills had Buechele on their practice squad all of last season. He's been in this system. I know that this is now Joe Brady's offense, but he's been around here long enough where the Bills probably have an idea about what his upside truly is as an NFL player. And when roster cutdown day happens across the league, there are going to be teams that are cutting players that have maybe even starting NFL experience that are better suited to be in that third quarterback role. I'll give you one name, and I'm not saying the Bills should go out and clamor to go get him, but Bailey Zappi, for instance, out of New England. He's going to be the odd man out there. They have four. He is not going to be one. He's not going to be the one that's kept. It's pretty much already Milton at number 3, May at number 2, and then you're going to start the year with Jacoby Brissett. So a guy like that is a significant upgrade, in my opinion, over a Shane Buechele. And there's not going to be a ton of quarterbacks that were starting in this league last year, for instance, but there are going to be guys where the upside might be higher, might fit Joe Brady's actual scheme a little bit better too. So Brady should have some input on guys that become available at roster cutdown day. Buechele had a rough outing. Again, just like Trubisky held the ball too long, tried to create with his legs when there was nothing there, ran into pressure at times.
I don't think all those sacks were on the offensive line. He ran into sacks on a couple of occasions.
And he took off too early. And I get that because there were times where the line wasn't the greatest either, but not all of them were on the line.
As we move along here, just a quick shout out to all of our insiders on the text line. You can become an insider right now by texting 716-528-6727 or go to joinsubtext.com/shoutbuffalobills. 2-week free trial, $3.99 a month after that, and the Shout text line. It's brought to you by Carrie C. Beyer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro. Located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give them a call, 716-852-1234, or go to litrolaw.com.
Yeah, insiders, pretty ugly game today. There wasn't much to discuss in game because of how poorly they were playing, and I know that the whole lack of game planning was part of it, but after the game, we'll, share some of our thoughts on the insider text line. I'll share some of my stock up, stock down in there. We'll have you covered here post game, but definitely a game to forget if you're a Bills fan.
Let's get to the run game before we pivot into special teams, and then we'll talk about a couple defensive performances today. Because I thought, one thing stock up is maybe a depth safety that I talked to after the game. We'll get into that in a moment. But I think the run game, we saw Darrington Evans and Frank Gore Jr. kind of pick up the slack for James Cook and Ray Davis, who combined for 4 yards on 9 carries. I think a lot of that was definitely on the plate of the offensive line. There was one play in particular, I think it was a Cook run, where it looked like Spencer Brown was trying to come around the end and pull a bit. And I don't know if he just got his feet tripped up or what was the problem, but he just kind of like plodded forward into the defender, closing the complete hole down for James Cook to look for any green area and open space. I think it's definitely concerning that you're not able to get push up front, right? Like, there's a standard Sean McDermott talked about, and the Bills didn't meet that standard today. But I will say on the Spencer Brown front, are we concerned at all about Spencer Brown? Because this is a guy that's had, when we've talked about guys winning pass rush reps in training camp, Brown's been kind of the recipient on the offensive side, has himself kind of like a so-so outing today. He missed most of the spring, coming back from the injury. Where's your level of concern there right now?
It's slow right now. I don't have a ton of concern. He did play good football last season for Buffalo, and as long as he's healthy, I think that he'll be in line for another really good season. That play specifically was rough. I feel like that was the third down play because Deion Dawkins got kind of blown up on one side, and then Spencer Brown was beaten on the other, trips over himself, and there's just nowhere to run. It wasn't an encouraging effort from this O-line, but as Connor McGovern said, they weren't really game planning for the stunts that the Bears are throwing at them. They had 4 kind of runs installed. They're just kind of going along with what they brought into this. They don't want to have any kind of film out there for the opposition, especially some of these teams they play in the first few weeks. So I would say hold off on that panic altogether. But you do want to see Spencer Brown repeat what he did in the regular season last year, these next 2 preseason games. And when he's in there, dominate those one-on-one battles, hold his own, create some running lanes for his backs, protect Josh Allen, which, the O-line did. Allen scrambled once, but he didn't get sacked today. And that's also part of Allen's bread and butter is making the O-line look better in that area where he doesn't take a lot of sacks.
One storyline that, fans were worried about was the exchanges between Connor McGovern and Josh Allen. And the first early return on that was both of them saying that it went really well. So that's an area that if you could kind of put that off as a concern, I think that's huge for this offense as they try to, get on the same page. I mean, the one overarching takeaway from this game is that the offense didn't look like they were on the same page. I know it was very vanilla. I know it'll look better with a game plan, all those things. But that's an area that you're going to want to go. And on the Brown front, what's the alternative? I saw one of the comments in there, like what else would the Bills do? I mean, Ryan Vandenberg mostly does play at left tackle. Tylan Grable, I thought, looked like he was playing his first NFL game today. Yeah. So, I mean, that's something that now you might be even thinking about stashing him on the practice squad. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do there. I don't think Lyle Collins can play tackle at this stage of his career. I thought it was interesting that he didn't do it today. He didn't play tackle today.
No, he did not. And, Grable really got beaten badly. There's no other way to say this. There was one play where he just kind of looked lost on the field and didn't even pick up the edge rusher. The edge rusher went right around him for an easy sack on the play, and that was Grable's responsibility. And we were talking about it. We didn't know if maybe he thought he had protection coming from the back, but the back was on the other side. The back was on the left, where maybe he thought he was on the right side of the field. Whatever the reason was, Grable was beaten very badly. He looked like an NFL rookie. He looks like a guy that hasn't played a ton of reps at tackle in his career. And that does give you a little bit of pause or concern in terms of, does this guy get on your 53-man roster? Can you sneak him onto the practice squad? You're going to put Travis Clayton on the practice squad, you would assume, with that one international spot that you get. Vandemark's a lock, but then what do you do about that extra tackle spot? Is it, Richard Garage, who I have to go back and look at the tape to see how he did today? Is it someone that gets cut across this league? Is that the route they want to go? But wasn't very encouraging from the depth as well. So for the question of, what do they have behind Spencer Brown? Not much.
Not much of an update. Was Sean McDermott asked about Ed Oliver,
no,
who left the game after one snap?
He just said that they had positive news. They thought everyone came, not Ed Oliver specifically. He said everyone came out of this game healthy. So,
and it looked like he went back on the bench afterwards.
He was cleared to return by the PR or the Bills, but he just never came back in.
Right. So I think all good on the Ed Oliver front. And then it's like one of those things, like maybe you dodge a bullet, maybe keep him out for the rest of the preseason. Because I don't know if you can have on defense a guy get hurt that's going to be more painful to what the Bills want to do on defense than Ed Oliver.
Right. And you already have Daquan Jones dealing with a groin injury. I will say I thought Austin Johnson flashed a few times today, made some nice plays. But that's not someone you want playing significant reps. You want him to be a reserve behind Oliver and Daquan Jones. So, protect your guys, especially when you're already beat up at that position a little bit right now. Let Ed Oliver take the next 2 weeks off. You know what he's capable of doing, and he showed that all of last season and even this summer at training camp.
So next up, let's go to this kick return battle, because I thought that was one of the most –
What battle? That was terrible. No one
– So I'll say this. You're right. But I thought that the one little spark that we did see, and Sean made sure to mention it today, the punt return from KJ Hamler was good. Like, I mean, he showed some like short area quickness. He kind of scooted up the one sideline. And in a game like this, if it was an actual real game with the starters playing on both sides, that's huge. Like if this is in the fourth quarter, third quarter, I can't remember when that was. If it's a close game and you're backed up to your 2-yard line or 5-yard line as opposed to starting at the 23, huge difference in the game. And now that's on the good side for KJ Hamler. On the bad side, he fumbles one all the way down on the other side of the field from where we're sitting right now on the kickoff. And the kickoff looked janky in general. I mean, Tyler Bass was dealing with the elements. The wind was kicking pretty bad. He kicked 2 into the end zone. You see the frustration with Matthew Smiley and with Tyler Bass. Sean McDermott said Hamler and Daquan Hardy were both kind of struggling first time in the stadium, dealing with the wind conditions. But you're right. It's probably something where most of this is a wash, and that we move toward next week in the Steelers and reevaluating here. But I think KJ Hamler, as bad as the fumble was, might have the little bit of a leg up in that battle at least.
Yeah, I don't know if it's enough of a leg up, though, to say this guy should get a roster spot where you might only keep 5 receivers, you might keep 6, and he hasn't done enough in the receiving aspect to earn that role possibly.
Yeah, bad drop. I'm going to call that a drop. I know it was high, but it was a drop.
But you can get your hands on it, you should catch that.
That's what my dad always just said.
That's right. See? But, yeah, the muff on the one return was very bad. Obviously, Hardy backing up towards the end zone. He almost had it pop off of his shoulder. The wind here in Buffalo is unique. It is, the way that it blows at times can throw you off, and they both struggled, but was not encouraged with either of the return options today.
Look at this picture, dude.
It's pretty awesome.
That's pretty sweet. Check out this picture. Shout out to Team USA, man. That's Wemby going up to try to block Steph Curry. Couldn't do it. USA captures gold. Go Team USA. Ryan's not really a big Team USA basketball
get
fan.
out of here.
He was rooting for Serbia the other day.
No.
Dude, don't you have like a Nikola Jokic Serbia jersey at home in your closet?
No, but I wouldn't mind having one of those. I like Jokic.
I can tell. I can tell by your commentary.
No, I was not thrilled with LeBron James complaining about a celebration from Team Serbia and then going and doing the too small celebration himself.
How did you feel about it after you learned why he was complaining?
I still don't think he should be doing. He does this too much. He complains too much for being the greatest of all time in caps because he's not better than Jordan.
Dude, did you watch Michael Jordan play the game?
I did.
He complained all the time. He did
not to other players.
Dude, he got in so many fights. He got in so many arguments.
Right. He wasn't being a baby about a celebrate. Like he was
always a baby about getting hit.
No.
I mean, his whole early part of his career, he was complaining about it, getting hit to the point when they realized that he was like, the jewel of the league, and they started like giving him all the calls. Dude,
LeBron would have retired if he was getting hit like Jordan was against the Pistons back in the day.
Get out.
He would have quit.
Get out of here.
He would have cried and quit.
I can see Ryan's Serbia jersey under his shirt. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Walter. What did you think about Steph Diggs yesterday? His first clip that's gone viral in Houston, talking up C.J. Stroud. And I also saw a clip of D'Amico Ryans talking about who wouldn't want to have this guy in the locker room. And the first thing I thought about when he said that, and this is coming from somebody who I like Stefon Diggs. I enjoyed all my interactions with him. But the tenor of that relationship changes over time. Ask people in Minnesota and people here in Buffalo.
Right. I agree. Real quick, shout out CB. LeBron is a baby. 100% true. Stefon Diggs. He finished with the same stat line that I did today. 0 catches, 0 targets, 0 yards in his debut with the Houston Texans. I think he was just kind of coaching up Stroud on the sidelines about here's what I do. Here's what I'm trying to do on this given play. Here's what I'll be for you. Even though he didn't get any targets in the game, I didn't have any issue with what he was doing on the sidelines there. It didn't look like he was angry or frustrated, just kind of talking to the quarterback about building up that chemistry. Yeah, for sure. Back to the Bills. Defensively, I thought when Caleb Williams was in the game, and I mean, he finished with really nice first game. I mean, they weren't able to execute in the red zone, but he went 4 for 7. 57% completion percentage, 95 yards,
Had a long of a 42-yard pass. I think that was like on a screenplay though, like, right? Was that like a little dink play, like short pass?
It was like a shovel pass.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's not go too crazy there. 101.8 quarterback rating. Like, it was a good first game for a rookie in a preseason game. But I thought the Bills, Von Miller didn't play, but they just did not get any pressure up front at all at any given time. He was able to kind of sit back there. And even when he kind of evaded the pocket a couple times, there was no secondary pressure. It's just like, again, I'm not going to overreact to any of this, but if we get to Arizona and we're doing this post-game podcast in this room, and this is the case with Kyler Murray,
right
now we're sitting here talking about, okay, you have Marcus West as the new defensive line coach. Von Miller will play in the game you expect, but if they're not getting any consistent pressure and guys are able to kind of sit back there and kind of pick their spots, that's a really bad spot for this Bills defense to be in.
Yeah, huge problem for the Bills to be in if that happens in the regular season. But like you said, preseason matchup, the stats by Caleb Williams were a little inflated because of that shovel pass. I'll also say, and I'll go back and watch it again, but I watched it live. I watched it on the TV. I have no idea what the ref threw the flag on Cam Lewis for on that third down play where he jumped in front of the pass.
Yeah, it was very
That would have
strange.
ended the drive. That would have the Bears
Was it pass
punted.
interference at the
called
top
illegal,
of the route?
Well, they called illegal contact, but I didn't even see. I
Yeah.
didn't see it. He was in good position. He got in front. Had no call there. They punt that some of those yards that he had after the fact never happened, and we're talking about a completely different game. So little things like that matter too. But in the real game settings, Matt, you're right. You want to see pressure from Von Miller, who wasn't out there today. You want to see Greg Rousseau. He had a nice run stop early in the matchup, but you want to see him get after the quarterback. And when they do drive the quarterback out of the pocket, you need someone to be there in the middle to get after him. And Ed Oliver exits after one play. Maybe that would have been Ed Oliver today. Maybe it would be Daquan Jones or one of these linebackers. But for whatever the reason today, when Caleb Williams eluded that first rush of pressure, he was untouched. He could run. He could find the open player. He did a nice rollout to his right where he found a player down toward the sidelines, made a great throw there that I think Bears fans will be very excited about and rewatch multiple times. So a good debut, though, for the rookie.
I thought Rasul Douglas, one of the best plays of the game. They were driving, and he got into the lane, and nice tackle for a loss. I thought in coverage, the Bills looked a little bit like, from a communication perspective, it just wasn't quite firing on all cylinders yet, especially on those first two Caleb Williams drives. And
too much space to the receivers. There's the 3rd and 12 play, and Rasul Douglas was the one that gave up the play technically in terms of who was on the receiver. Just way too much space. You got to play a little bit tighter in those situations so you don't even give the receiver the opportunity to make a play like that right at the line of gain, which ended up being a first down.
All right, so thank you so much for watching on YouTube, subscribing to the channel as well. Before we get out of here, quick stock up, stock down. We've already kind of alluded to a couple of that. I'm going to give my big stock up award to Kendall Williamson, safety for the Buffalo Bills. He signed a futures deal earlier this year. Talked to him after the game. He said he spent his offseason for the most part in Buffalo and spent a lot of time with Taron Johnson, who, I mean, that's kind of the recipe at this point, right? Send him on over to Taron Johnson, these young defensive backs, get him coached up. I thought he looked the part today. He has been a guy that's been the next man up with Cole Bishop and Mike Edwards being out of action. It didn't look too big for him. He had the penalty. I thought that was kind of borderline. I don't know if I know he hit him, but it didn't look like it was super egregious. No. But he made a nice pass breakup against DJ Moore, which I thought was a big play in the game early on. Kendall Williamson, for me, is a guy whose stock's rising with, Cole Bishop, Mike Edwards. Their stock's not declining, but it's just like it's staying steady because they can't get on the field. They can't get on the practice field.
Yeah, and that helps Williamson's case in terms of making this initial roster if they're not going to be ready for week 1. So you feel good about his performance. For me, Matt, stock up. Tyler Bass comes in. He had a good training camp. I know the misses were really bad when he missed, but he made a lot more than he missed at camp. But he comes in, we talked about the wins here, makes both of his kicks at 24 and 48, I believe off the top of my head, yard field goals. So that helps a little bit in terms of maybe bouncing back from last season, how he performed. Really encouraged with that. he'd like to have some of those kickoffs back for sure, because I think that wasn't necessarily the game plan, the way he kicked some of them. But for the field goal kicking aspect of it, stock up for Tyler Bass.
Stock down. I think that's where we go next.
Offensive line.
The entire line, all 3 units.
Well, definitely the first 2, I would probably say. And I don't think there's a lot to be encouraged about. You know, Sean McDermott said, yes, there wasn't much of a game plan, but they were getting out physical the line by the Bears. And you do have to win some of those matchups at times, even if you're not game planning in these settings. It's a little discouraging to see with this new look offensive line how they were pushed around today. The first unit, the second unit as well. We talked about the breakdowns on the edge from Spencer Brown, the one play from Deion Dawkins, Tylen Grable, no push in the interior on these short yardage plays, even late in the game with the third team unit. What was it, a 3rd, 4th and 1 type play, and they couldn't move the chains, turn the ball over on downs. So a very uninspiring performance from the offensive line.
You know, I'd probably give, if I had to give my stock down, I'd probably give it to MVS, who we already talked about. But I'll also like throw in like a half of that prize to Sam Martin, where, listen, it's a windy day, but guess what you're doing when you're signing with the Buffalo Bills? Kicking in windy conditions. It's going to get a lot worse, at different points of the season. And, he ends up here today. We look at the special teams. He punted the ball 6 times, averaged 46 yards, had 2 inside the 20, but there were a couple in there that were really bad. And it's just one of those things that, like, 2 field goals made. He was holding for both of those, so I give him a little bit of a bump up there. But for a guy that you're paying $2 million to, like, to me, that's a consideration, is like, how do you come in here when the weather elements are what they are? It's why they went out and drafted Matt Ariza back in the day, because they wanted a guy that could kick in the elements, had that kind of power. And there was a couple kicks that you just kind of went away, like, that wasn't good enough.
No. After that first punt, I'm sure Sam Martin and his entire family were puffing their chests out. 60-yarder down within the 5. Lot to be happy about there, Mr. Parrino. But shanks the second punt and struggles. What was it? Had 2 good punts in total. I think 2 of them went inside the 20. Most of them left some things to be desired. Some were line drives, didn't have the hang time. He didn't have a great day. The wind is something that he's going to have to deal with here in Buffalo almost every game. It's always an issue, it seems like. And you can't, count on someone if he's only going to make good kicks 50% of the time or even less.
All right. Thank you so much for watching on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. It was windy, but the temperature was just right. For Ryan Talbot, I'm Matt Parrino. We'll be back this week. We're heading to Pittsburgh. Make sure you join the Insider text line. We're going to take you along for the ride. It's going to be a fun time. Final thought, buddy.
Yeah, final thought. If you're not a part of the Insider chat line yet, Bills Mafia, join now. That trip to Pittsburgh is going to be well worth it for that 2-week free trial.
For Ryan, I'm Matt. Take care, everybody. See you soon.